Welcome to the KM Builders Remodeling and Design Show. I'm Keith Moehle along with Morgan.
Hello, everybody.
And we are glad to be with you, and we are discussing common myths of remodeling today. There's a lot of good stuff we wanted to cover with you, and I think you're going to benefit from some of the points that are actually very, very common. People don't really know what's true anymore. There's so much misinformation out there, and of course remodeling is not something that most people do very often, so they don't have a lot of experience in it, and we do. So we want to share things that we've learned, and actually, you know, over the years I've taken a lot of these things for granted and assume that people do know these things, but actually I've come to learn that they don't. So I want to share them with you, and we're going to debunk some myths and give you some real wisdom in remodeling that you might not otherwise have known. And like always, we want to give the proof. Along with the answers, we want to give you some real reasons for it also. So I think you're going to like some of these remodeling myths. But before we get started, Morgan, you have our first segment on the lame contractor of the week.
Yes, so this post is from next door in Rogers Ranch, and Shaz says that this man, Randy Malden, took my money in September of 2018 and never completed the work. He claimed he needed the money to purchase the parts we needed. Lesson learned. A neighbor stated on this app that he took her belongings and disappeared. Beware, neighbors. He was recommended to me from the app, and every time I post to warn you guys, they remove the post. So this person, she even shows a screenshot. She Googled him, and he's been charged with theft. Faces $2,500 to $30,000. So this is real, and we have to be careful.
Yeah, it is. Again, doing your homework, and it actually goes back to our first myth.
Mm-hmm.
And the first myth that we want to debunk goes right along with that, and it has to do with hiring some handyman to do your remodeling. There's several people that should not be doing your remodeling, and one of them's a handyman. One of them's your unemployed relative or brother-in-law who thinks he knows a lot about construction. He's been in construction, maybe some aspect of construction, but certainly not remodeling. And then the third person you don't want to hire to do your remodeling is yourself.
Yeah.
Because you're going to pay for yourself one way or another with your time. It could cost you a lot more than time, though. It could cost you a lot more materials. I've seen people spend the majority of what they would have paid a contractor just by wasting materials or not knowing how to do it right.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I remember even we did that one time when we insulated the room addition because we wanted to save labor and we wanted everybody to have fun doing it, which insulation is so fun, right?
Yeah.
But I kind of figured it out later on that we could have paid a subcontractor or our insulation contractor about the same thing we spent in materials. And you know what we didn't do? We didn't waste any materials. That's just what a great price they get on materials that we don't get when we go buy insulation from Home Depot.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so that was, I didn't want to tell you that until years later, until after you'd gotten over the itchy.
Yeah.
If I'd have told you all that,
itchy
if I'd have told you
days.
that back then, you would have killed me.
Yeah.
But
well, that was annoying.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
That you can spend a lot of money on the materials because you can't buy them at the same rate that the contractors can.
And you don't really realize it.
No, even I, whom a contractor, I can't buy insulation at the level that an insulation contractor buys it. They buy it in truckloads, railroad cars full of it. And so they apply it with their labor, which is less also. You know, they apply very reasonably priced labor, and they blow in a lot of it, and they do it the most economical way possible. So that's just one example of why you wouldn't want to do it yourself in many cases. You know, this isn't like, I think I'm going to replace some boards on the back deck, which you might be able to do. That's one project. Or tearing out the carpet and I'm going to throw some stain on the floor, some paint my floors. Those are do-it-yourself projects, and even those are hard. Mm-hmm. Even those don't give the desired results. Usually, if you do not have the right tools and the right set of experience, you do not end up doing it the way that you would be okay with a contractor doing it. you're going to have to accept a lower standard. Set your mind up that if you do it yourself, you're going to have to accept a lower standard than what you would if you paid someone. And you're still going to have a lot of effort, and you're going to spend more on money on the materials. Not to mention all this time that it takes you. So, you need to know what to expect if you're going to do something on your own. Again, there are so many nuances of a complex remodeling project. Do not be fooling yourself. So, a lot of people have been real wise and have told me, I have some friends, or I have a relative, a good friend of mine is a contractor, but I don't, and he does it all the time, but I don't want to have them on my house because of the relationship. And that is a very wise decision.
Ruin your relationship.
Yeah, it really could. You want to be able to get your money's worth, and you want to be able to get it the way you want it, and you don't know if that's going to hurt your friendship or not. So that's a wise thing not to do. There's another relationship you don't want to mess up, and that is with your wife or your husband. If you're doing it yourself, it could cost you a lot of misery between the two of you because expectations are not the same. You haven't had a formal meeting on it. This is what I want. You haven't had the same things you would do with a contractor. So we take too many things for granted, and we start off with really setting ourselves up for disaster because we didn't have the right meetings we would have with a contractor. Even with a contractor, it can be tough if you're not doing your homework. As we've seen week after week, people get taken by contractors because they don't do their research there. Well, it doesn't go away just because you do it yourself. Your expectations and your spouse's expectations, your significant other expectations are going to be different unless you get on the same page. So don't think just because you're doing it yourself that you can handle everything as it comes up. Your energy levels will go down. You will not want to finish this project, and stress is going to go up.
And when you hire somebody, you have somebody else to blame or get upset at if something's not going right instead of each other.
And someone to get it fixed too.
Yeah.
That says, I want it different.
Yep.
And sometimes paying that to get that done the way you want is the least painful thing you could have ever done. And you should realize that paying is not a bad thing in all cases. It can be a very, very good thing. Well, we're going to take a break in just a second, but I did want to mention my friend Joe Caccino at BioGreen. In fact, this morning, Morgan and I were talking about the yard. What did you say?
Oh, man, it looks so pretty.
Yeah, it's really, really looking good. We started with Joe this year, and he's really done a great job. If you'd like to see that micronutrient feeding he does, and I've been amazed at another thing, and that's the weeds are gone. I used to fight those and pull them up by hand, but it never could win. But he put that pre-emergent and killed the ones that are there. So that is really fun to see. Just grass. It's just grass now.
Yeah, and I was telling you the other day, I can see the runners coming.
Right.
So it's really
it's
going
off.
in.
Yeah, look them up at biogreensa.com or 421-9522. We'll be right back to the KM Builders Remodeling and Design Show. Welcome back to the KM Builders Remodeling and Design Show. I'm Keith along with Morgan, and we are talking about common myths in remodeling. Now, the first one we talked about was a kind of a negative, don't do it yourself, or don't hire your brother-in-law, don't hire your neighbor, your unemployed relative, those things. And but now we're going to talk about some things that people think are going to be worse than they actually are. But before we do that, we want to get into the next segment. What's our first segment that you have for us, Morgan?
Well, this one is our client testimonial.
Oh, that's right. Our kudos, our self-kudo here.
And we have the Aguilars. They said on Facebook, they recommended us and said, what can I say about Mike? But that he did an outstanding job. And so that's the project manager that they had.
Mike Garcia.
He said, he supervised the job site and corrected problems quickly before they became an issue. He is happy to see you, but very professional when dealing with clients and his team members. Mike responded quickly when called and handled each situation as soon as was possible. Even when we had a major issue, Mike was easy to work with.
Yes, and that we had an issue with the countertops on that one. That was a real problem, but they are such great
Oh, they were
clients.
so sweet.
And we've done multiple projects for the Aguilars, and we thank them very much for their repeat business. But isn't it nice that they can request the project manager they want and work with the same person over and over again? I mean, they could have been with us for 21 years and they could still request the same guy.
Yeah.
Because he's been here that long.
Yep.
And so kudos to Mike, and we are grateful to have you. And this is related to, projects going smooth. And that's what you want when you do remodeling. We said probably on most remodeling projects, it's way more complex than you think. One of the common myths that we see kind of goes to how happy clients are, and that is that it doesn't have to go bad. Things like problems can be worked out. They're more costly than they thought they'd be, that they run longer, that the whole house is going to be trashed. If these things don't have to happen that way. So one of the myths is that it's going to run longer and costlier. Now, it is very true that many projects go beyond the budgeted range and the time frame. But that only happens if you're not doing your work up front. KM Builder spends a disproportionate amount of time up front than most contractors do, because we want it all planned out. We want to understand exactly where everything's going to cost, because we know you'll be disappointed with us if any of that changes. Even if you say, well, I wish I would have known that earlier, that's really pointing to us. And we don't want to hear that. We don't want you to feel that way. So it doesn't have to be that way. But a lot of people are so gung-ho to get started that contractors, they feed on that.
Yeah.
And they make you think, look, we can get started sooner. We can get started right away. Oh, yeah, that sounds great. But there are so many delays along the way, and so many things are going to cost more if you do that. Running longer and costing more go hand in hand. Let's just use an example of, you didn't know exactly how you wanted the cabinets laid out, or exactly how that backsplash was going to go. Well, you start putting it on and you take it down. You start adding a cabinet, you order that cabinet. The extra cabinet's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to 8 weeks to get in, because you didn't order them early enough. Even if you order all of the cabinets after you start, you are going to have an 8-week delay. And that's somewhere in the line, that project should have been mostly done within 8 weeks. So if you're ordering your cabinets after you start, that's a big problem. If you're ordering your tile after you start, that's a problem. And that means your layouts haven't been done. And if your layouts haven't been done, then your plugs and your switches are going to be in the wrong spot.
Wow.
And if you move your plugs and switches again, or for the first time too late in the game, there's a delay. If you start moving them after you started the tile guy pulls off. He can't finish. You've got to go in and change the plugs. Either that or it looks really bad.
So this stuff doesn't have to happen?
No, it does not have to happen. There are some times when something is changed on site because it's just really a last minute thought of the client. And we try to avoid that. We really try to avoid that. But one or two little things is not going to kill a job. Little details. But and you can avoid most of them. And that's the good news. You can avoid them. And it does mean that you can start your project and have your kitchen longer without being disturbed. Even though the thing you want the most is to tear something out, I'm tired of seeing it, that is probably the worst thing to do, because you will not have a kitchen or a bathroom for a much longer period of time if you tear it out too soon. So you need to discuss with a professional your budget and the time frame. Do not let this go on as an undiscussed issue.
I know many of our clients will they have something like a wedding that's coming up, and so they give us a time frame sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly. And we tell them honestly whether we can meet those. We just had a client call last week and tell us that they wanted to move their completion date up a month. That's not going to work. We had to tell them that is not going to work, because the cabinets are taking 8 weeks to get in, and this is a very rare time that they're 6 to 8 weeks. Normally they're 4 weeks. But because of the kind of cabinets they ordered, that we designed, these are going to take even longer. And we did tell them that up front, that we could meet the original deadline, but when they want to move it up, we just don't have that flexibility, because the cabinets will be coming in at the end of May.
But that just shows that it's not a guessing
Right. It's not a guessing game. And the thing that they would have loved us to say is, okay,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and
Just
move
try
that up.
it.
We'll try to do that. But the best thing to tell them was no.
Yeah.
In some cases, the best thing you need to hear out of your contractor is no, that's not going to work. And of course, you want a reason why. But just saying and agreeing with everything is not a solution.
Yeah.
Because later on you end up paying for that. You end up the hard, cold truth will come rolling in like a freight train, and it will upset you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's some other things that most contractors, even if you look at websites on things that can't be avoided, one of them will be like mold. And another one would be like if your plumbing or wiring doesn't meet the current code. They'll tell you that those things might be discovered, so you need a contingency. But with KM Builders, we know those things too. We know whether your wiring and so forth is going to. We check that out beforehand. So if we have to change it to meet the codes, like a 4-wire system versus the old 3-wire system, we tell you that up front, that this could be an issue, and if the city inspector says it's going to be an issue, then this is how much it's going to cost you.
So at least you know.
Yeah, and that can all be changed afterward, but some things have to be done then. Now, mold is another one that a lot of people think is going to delay a job a lot. We are so good at looking at mold and knowing how far it goes that we can tell you up front. If there's any signs of mold, then if it's large, we know that what we're going to have to do. If it's small, we know what we're going to have to do. And about 99% of the time, we take care of it, we spray it, we don't even charge you. And we get rid of it without any charges. So that can be a delay for some contractors. It's not with us. And one of the things we do also is test for lead paint before we start so that we know what we're going to be up against there. And the last thing we want to do is delay a project because of remediating lead paint. You deserve to know before we start whether you've got that issue. But a lot of contractors don't. They don't do these things until they're in the middle of it, and it changes the timeline. But like we said, we want to spend a disproportionate amount of time up front handling these issues so that you do not. So these myths in remodeling, the real myth is that people think they have to happen, and they don't. They can all be avoided. So that is one of the things that we really like to avoid. Another myth is that a permit's not required. So
most places you need a permit.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. But we did want to mention our sponsor of North Park Lexus at Dominion. What a great place to do business. What a great series of cars coming out that they have right now. They're on the interstate frontage road over there on I-10. And my friend, Mr. Cavazos, Al Cavazos, is awesome to work with. And he would love to talk to you personally. He's the general manager there. Call him at 816-6000. Or look them up at northparklexus@dominion.com. And we'll be right back to the KM Builders Remodeling and Design Show. Welcome back to the KM Builders Remodeling and Design Show. I'm Keith, along with Morgan.
Hello, everybody.
And we are talking about common myths in remodeling. This is actually a part 1. We'll be doing a part 2 the following week. And these are just some things that we have noticed that people don't expect, or they've been told wrong about, and we want to set the matter straight for you. And we're going to be talking about permits and HOAs next. We've talked about who to hire and not to hire. It's not an unemployed relative or a handyman or doing it yourself. In most cases, it's a lot tougher than you thought. And that projects have to run longer and cost more than you have planned. That is not true. That the whole house is going to be trashed. We're going to talk about that a little bit. We didn't talk about that too much. So those are some of the things we've talked about and we'll talk about. But first we have what's trending with Morgan.
Yes, so this is really cool. It's when you paint the entire room one color. And so that includes the doors, the trims, everything. Yeah, if you have cabinets or closet doors or whatever. And it could be very moody or very bright, but I think it makes the space look bigger. And
unless it's dark.
Yeah, but think about if it was a white room and you just painted it all the trims, everything. And it kind of gives more of a built-in look if you have your cabinets painted the same color as the wall.
That's true. That is very true.
it elevates the room. And so it's a really cool option, but it's extremely trending right now. So really cool.
Yeah, that
especially
is neat.
in bedrooms.
I could see that built-in look, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have even a darker color, maybe for a bedroom might be more soothing, like a gray or maybe a bluish gray. I wouldn't go too strong, but if you went with something that was classy colored, like a gray or a bluish gray, maybe a steel blue, I can imagine.
Really nice.
I can imagine that being warm and like you said, a real built-in look on any furniture, cabinet pieces, like maybe a built-in armoire or a custom armoire that was painted the same color would look great. And you can use all the same sheens too.
Yep.
And by the way, one of the trends that is really going on too that I want to mention, because I never do what's trending, is flat paints.
Yes,
really flat paints, even on trims, staying maybe a almost like an eggshell on the trims and a flat on the walls. With the quality paints that are out there now, that is a very straight look. I call it a straight look. It's because all the imperfections that are naturally in construction go away. And if you have a real eye for detail, you're never going to be 100% completely satisfied with every speck on your wall that texture creates. But if you go flat, you will think you have a perfectly flat wall. And especially if you're going with the very low textures or the level 5 finishes, you need to stay with flat paints. And that's what I'm going to do when we remodel. We're going with all flat paints, and then maybe a very eggshell finish on the trims. It looks so much more upgraded, so much straighter. Everything looks more perfect. You're just going to believe that you're in a perfect home if you do that. And that's what I'm doing. In your house, in your apartment, it's all flat.
Oh, okay. I was wondering.
Yeah, and it looks good. It looks really good. But it does make the job look more, I mean, a lot closer to perfection.
That's good.
And who can argue with that?
Yeah.
So one of the things I didn't mention in the last section was about feeling that the whole home has to be destroyed whenever you do remodeling, or that you can't live there while the remodeling is going. That is a real myth that KM Builders dispels regularly.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I follow somebody and she's getting her bathroom redone, and they moved out because there was so much dust. But she asked for opinion. She said, "Is this normal?" And so I commented back and said, no. She showed a picture of what they did to dust proof, and they just taped a plastic sheet. And it was super thin. She was like, it's ripped, it has holes, it's doing nothing. And so we do not do that.
Right. No, we don't. And you know what? We've had a few dust gaps. We just figured out on one job that one of the doors wasn't shutting right, and it did create dust in the adjacent room. It was a thin layer, but we had it professionally cleaned, and you know, they're very happy with the cleaning process. And we normally include that or give them an option for professional cleaning, and so that was done. And by the way, we got a real compliment on our professional cleaner, Marcy. Yeah, he said, keep that woman, that lady, that gal is great. And so
but we don't just do plastic sheets. That's not our dusting.
That's
dust
correct.
proof.
Yeah.
We actually build I think
wall.
it looks like a picture frame that's fit perfectly into your wall, and with this really thick
Tyvek
barrier.
Thick barrier that doesn't cut. The cats don't scratch it up real easily. They'd have to really work at it because it has fiber reinforced. So just putting plastic does not work.
No.
And that is a myth that you have to live.
There is a way to prevent that.
That you have to live with all that. That's right. And so so you can, with professional company, you can the whole house can be lived in except the area where the work is going on. We're not going to use your other restroom of the home either, so that area could be yours and personal, and we don't have to get in there. The workers will stay in the area that we planned on being in. So that is one myth that we did want to debunk, and it is happening every day on multiple KM projects. And so if you want to see more about that, you can look us up at kmbuilders.com. And I did want to mention our other sponsor for the show, and that we are really pleased with, and that's Legacy Heating and AC Services. They too have that neat, quick get in and get out attitude. Look them up at legacyservicesac.com, and they can lower your bills They really can. The air conditioning, if you're thinking about it, have them do it. Look at their mini splits, too, that we install on lots of projects. Call them at 830-608-8000 or legacyservicesac.com, and we'll be right back to the KM Builders Remodeling and Design Show. Welcome back to the KM Builders Remodeling and Design Show. I'm Keith Moehle along with Morgan.
Hello, everybody.
And we are glad to be with you. We are discussing common myths of remodeling. It's a part 1 show. We'll be doing part 2 next week, and we hope it's helped you. We've covered a lot of points that a lot of people misunderstand or have been told wrong. And just a brief overview of what we've talked about: I can do it myself, or hire a handyman, or hire my unemployed brother-in-law. Those are mistakes that many people make. You really want a professional in most remodeling project. It is a lot harder than you think. You haven't done it before, so you don't know this yet, but it's true. And also, we talked about remodeling projects will always go longer than you think if you hire a contractor, or that it's going to go over budget. Now, that's where good planning with professionals helps.
Yeah. And
we see that on all of our projects, that they don't go over budget unless somebody changes something. And we take a lot of responsibility for you not changing things by keeping you informed and presenting lots of opportunities and options for you at the beginning, more than you've thought of. And you'll be amazed at how you'll be glad that we thought of them for you. I always tell folks, we know more about what will concern you than you've even thought of, because we do it all the time. We take all the things we learn and we share them with every client so that they can cover all the bases, and it helps them. It helps them to feel more comfortable, to feel like they can feel confident going forward, and that they're not going to go over budget or over time. Sometimes we have to tell people the hard news, like you can't do that and still not affect your budget. You can't do that and not affect the timeline. Are you okay with that? But it's being upfront with people and telling them setting expectations is a big part of it, and communication is huge.
And it's still their decision.
Yeah, we always put it back on them. Let them decide, but give them the facts. We know that people will make the best decision for themselves, whether it's budget related, or whether it's product related, or whether it is timeline related, if they are given good information. But if we don't tell them, then it's on us. And so we do. We make sure we tell you. Another thing is that people feel as they can't live in their house while it's being remodeled, because of the bad reputation that so many have created with dust everywhere, or trash and everything, and noise and no privacy and so forth. But that is not true. A really good professional remodeling team knows how to help you live in your home. We've done major remodeling with people in there.
Yep.
In fact, our largest remodel we've ever done had people living in there the whole time.
Yep.
And so that is that's a credit to good processes. Another one is, I don't need a permit. And we haven't talked about that yet, but I want to discuss that. A lot of people think I can do it without a permit. And that could be a problem if you go to resell your home and there's no permit on it, and they can tell that it was added. They can tell that you changed it, and it's not hard to know when you have a custom shower built that that was not part of the original home, because builders didn't do that in that neighborhood. So your new homeowner may want a permit. Now, you may need a permit too, just for your own security, because your neighbor could see that there's work being done, and he could look it up online and see that you don't have a permit, and then you get fined by the city. We don't like doing that. Even though we're going to build everything according to national building codes and the International Residential Code, which the city adopts every so many years, they adopt the latest version of that. We follow all of that. So it wouldn't be a problem as far as what we're doing, but the city wants to be informed, and they want their little tax dollars on that permit fee.
Yeah.
So that permit fee means that for you, with a lot of contractors, it means somebody else is looking at the project for you and telling you whether your contractor is legit or not in some ways. Not everything, but it does help you to know that your contractor is, 1, licensed, 2, that he's going to have to do it according to the IRC, the International Residential Code. So you do want a permit in almost every case. There's very few projects that don't require permits, technically. Even a general repair permit is required for some that don't require inspections. So you should be getting a permit. It keeps your neighbors off your back, keeps the city off your back, and it helps you to make sure you've got a good contractor. And so we don't encourage people not to get permits. There's very few times where that's going to be applicable. Sometimes, though, people think they need a permit for something they don't need. And so we don't get permits where you don't have to. If we're doing countertops and backsplashes, you don't need a permit for that. In some cases you do, because you're going to do a sink and a faucet and so forth, and then we'd get a general repair permit for that. But there's a lot of things, painting and so forth, that don't need little siding repairs. They typically don't require. Windows are supposed to have a permit for that, a general repair permit. Roofing is supposed to have a a permit for that. And so a lot of contractors aren't doing this, and a lot of times the city is not catching it, but those are some myths that you do and don't need permits. A lot of times people get those mixed up. What about contacting the HOA? That's another myth. People think that if they get a project, they don't have to contact the HOA sometimes. Well, most everybody thinks they have to contact the HOA all the time because they're scared to death of the HOAs. And they're always worried with us. They say, if I have you,
will they approve it?
Yeah, will they approve it? Exactly. And the fact is that an HOA cannot disapprove something that is in harmony with the neighborhood, something that somebody else has in the neighborhood that was done, or that the builders do, or that's common in the industry in homes. And so the only things they won't approve, is things that are outlandish, that do not match the keeping of the home. They're a completely different style of the home. That doesn't mean you can't make a one-story or two-story. They can't stop you from doing that unless it's an all one-story home neighborhood.
Which is rare.
Which is very rare, but in fact, I've never seen one. But and even then, just because it happened to all be one-story homes, and that's not what I'm referring to. I'm talking about a one-story restricted neighborhood, and there's almost none of those.
Yeah.
So you can have a two-story home even in a one-story neighborhood. That's not specified in your deeds and covenants as a restriction. If it's not, then you can do it. They would have to prove to you why you couldn't. But most of the time, the secret is getting good paperwork to a homeowners association, and then they'll approve it easily. They want to know it's going to look right, and that's what good contractor that has a design team can do, like KM Builders. The last one I want to discuss is my taxes will go up. And just briefly, your taxes won't go up unless you're adding square footage. That's all they're looking at the tax appraisal's office. They're not looking at normal upgrades. Normal upgrades will not do that. So everybody upgrades their homes, and they don't change your price per foot on that, on your taxes. So this is some things that KM Builders can help you with. We'd love to help you out with it. And we're going to introduce you to our website, kmbuilders.com, if you'd like to set up an appointment, or call us at 680-5626. I'm about to go to Billy's Western Wear and get my new hornback lizard boots. And you can see them too at billyswesternwear.com, and we'll be showing a video of them real soon. But in the meantime, remember to call KM Builders for all your remodeling needs, and remember too that you could have someone else remodel your home, or at least try it, and then you'd have to live in it. Have a great day.